welcome all of you. I'm glad that you are joining. We're with a relatively small group, I think, so that's nice because for the interactive part, it's fun for us. Well, we have a workshop on assessment in interprogram challenge-based learning, and we're going to describe the case that we're currently working on with an interdepartmental Bachelor End Project. Yeah, well, again, if you have questions, leave it in the chat. And maybe it's nice that we shortly introduce ourselves as well. So I'm Chantal, and I'm a policy advisor at TUE Innovation Space.
Sorry, somebody muted me. I don't know why. I was muted for a second, but yes, hello, my name is Valencia, and I'm an educational researcher working for TUE Innovation Space. I have been following closely the case that we will present to you today, just trying to learn as much as possible about the learning experiences that our students have through the case that we will present, and helping also redesigning and innovating our education.
Yeah, thank you. So what we'll be doing today, and then I have to check whether it's working again. The fun part is we tested before we let everyone in, and I could.
Yes.
Yes, there it is. Please all go to menti.com. We'll share our experiences and we'll talk about the biggest challenges that we're currently facing with the redesign of interprogram Bachelor End Project. But first of all, Anna and I already mentioned that we're both working at TUE Innovation Space, as you see in our background as well. But how well do you know TUE Innovation Space? And if you go to menti.com, you can add the code that is on top of this slide and then answer the question. And again, it's for us. Yay, it's working. There are actually multiple persons that say, you know what, so that's... So it's good maybe that we nice, we have someone collaborating with us as well. So it's nice that we will explain a bit more about the TUE Innovation Space now, and that's good because if you all would have known already, then we wouldn't have had to. Again, Anna, I think you're helping me, right, with navigating because my...
No, it is working.
Well, TUE Innovation Space is the expertise center within the TUE on challenge-based learning and student entrepreneurship. So we're not a department, we're an independent center within the university, and we facilitate education within Innovation Space. And we have a physical building, as you can see, with the nice letters in front of the window. But it's also a community and a digital community at this moment, where we try to connect teachers, students, and the outside world to our innovation space. And the characteristics of our education within innovation space is, as I already said, we're doing challenge-based learning, and it means that we work within education, we work with real-world, open-ended challenges. And those challenges are really owned by challenge owners from industry, but can also be from within our university. So, for example, our student teams. And Anna will provide an example of such a challenge at a later stage. And we encourage students to work in interdisciplinary teams. So because we're not a department and we offer education from different departments, students from all departments can join our education. What means that students learn to collaborate and to communicate in an interdisciplinary way. And it's that way we're also gearing towards the T or pie-shaped professional. And the students are really in charge of their own learning path. So that's why we say it's really student-centered learning. So in general, and of course there are all kinds of differences within the different courses, students get a challenge at the beginning of a course. They team up with a team of students from different departments, and they're going to work on the challenge on their own and not knowing what the solution exactly will be in the beginning. So that's also the link to the entrepreneurial mindset, because of the openness of the challenges, students really need to be able to learn to deal with uncertainty and to have an entrepreneurial mindset. And what we now already have noticed in some teams is that they actually end up as a startup, for example. So we had a challenge from NASA working with data, and a team really thought of a company to monitor the growth of seaweed within the sea. And that company is really a startup, and it's currently official company, so not anymore a student team. And the hands-on part is really that within Matrix we have a lot of workshop facilities, but also light assembly, light prototyping facilities. And we really want students to not only think of a solution, but also prototype the solution. So really do what they are coming up with. And that way they can test and make a first prototype of the project. And that all is also linked to the systems thinking in the bigger view. So if students come up with a solution, they also should think of the bigger system. So what are the consequences, for example, for society in general? So this is, and of course, it's not possible within every course that all these characteristics are there, or it's not necessary, but these are the things, the characteristics that are really specific for TU Innovation Space, and not per se for challenge-based learning alone. So, and now we're of course really curious. Which characteristics do you consider most relevant for challenge-based learning? And you can select your top 3 in the question that you currently see.
Yeah.
It works, that's nice. And I see a question from Daniela. You assume they get credits for the course? Yeah, students, so we have regular courses within Innovation Space that are challenge-based, and we also have student teams that live with us. And the challenge, the courses are regular courses, so they get credits for working in a course, yes. So the real life open-ended challenges are most relevant. Is anyone willing to explain why you answered that?
Always everybody silent.
Yeah, we don't know who answered what, so I'm glad that you're breaking the silence.
So I was one of them. I think entrepreneurial mindset is more important actually, but I think real life open-ended challenges make it possible for students to understand that they are useful for some, how to say this, dat ze ertoe doen in Dutch, that they matter, that it matters what they do, and that it matters not merely for their own development or training or education, but that it matters to other people. I think that's what they are longing for if they are for so long students.
Yeah.
Students have to be so patient in being relevant to others.
Yeah, no, well, that's exactly what you want. It puts it in context, and then we also want to gear a lot of challenges towards the SDGs. So that the social impact is really clear as well, yeah, societal impact. But you, Jan, you mentioned that you say the entrepreneurial mindset is more important.
I think so, because that motivates students to take up ownership of their own education in a way. I think you can't be an entrepreneur if you're not owning what you want to do. And so this is one of the challenges, I think, of higher education and of education anyway, that you want it to be intrinsically motivated. If I don't know even if that's the best word for it, but you want students to go for it. And with an entrepreneurial mindset, you can't not go for it. That's exactly what such a mindset is about.
Yeah, and then it's also the ownership of your own education. So that's what that's also what we're trying to say with the student-centered. The students can choose their own path and their own challenges and their own solutions. Yes.
Yeah. But student-centered actually sounds a lot like it's what you are doing, not them. So you try to be student-centered, and they just try to be entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So student-centered is a quality of the education or of the challenges that you are offering, and emphasizing that, quite paradoxically, emphasizes that it's not about them. Strangely enough.
Maybe it's we should rethink the term. Well, yeah. Okay. Well, before we go into the case that we want to discuss with you today, we want to explain a bit about the way our bachelor program of the students is built. And that's a few years ago, we redesigned our bachelor college, and maybe some of you already know. But that means that we have general courses, so basic courses on, for example, engineering design, calculus, etc. And that's credits for 30 credits for every student. So all bachelor students have the same courses for 30 credits. Next to that, we have a youth learning line that every student does, and that's mainly focusing on the use of society enterprises. So that's also the bigger picture. We have the major, of course, that's all if someone chooses the mechanical engineering program, that's 90 credits. So they have half their curriculum is based on the mechanical engineering courses. And then every student has 45 credits on free electives, meaning that students can choose to deepen their program or to broaden their program. And overall, and also are able to choose courses from other departments that way. And what we now, because we think that the interdisciplinary learning and the challenge-based learning in our university is important, so we now have for the use courses and electives and within the general courses, everywhere there are challenge-based interdisciplinary courses. For the majors, we're still figuring out because that's majorly still mono or multidisciplinary. But within the other compartments of our courses from the bachelor, we see this development. And at the end of the bachelor, students do their Bachelor End Project. And regularly, you probably all know this kind of schedule that a Bachelor End Project, you do your 3 years of bachelor and then you finish your bachelor with a Bachelor End Project. And that's an individual assignment, and it's often academic research. Sometimes it's with a real assignment from a company, but it's an individual task in general. Yeah. And what we started is a few years ago, we started with an interdisciplinary Bachelor End Project. And then I'm probably going to hand over to Anna, because that we started that with the characteristics of our challenge-based learning and within innovation space. And we're currently doing research on that.
Yeah, and so I would like to now introduce to you the case that we will discuss today. So as Chantal mentioned, we have an alternative to the bachelor project or the final bachelor project for the students at TUI, and that it's called the Innovation Space Bachelor End Project. And this project is challenge-based learning. So it also has a lot of the characteristics that Chantal mentioned to you before, which means students work on open-ended challenges, they're learning by doing, they're working on interdisciplinary teams, they're collaborating with external parties or challenge owners that we call. And through this project, the students are able to develop both their disciplinary knowledge as well as broad professional skills. I'll come back to these characteristics and how the project is set up in a moment. But before that, we wanted to give you an example of what a challenge looks like. So this is one of the challenges that the students from ISBEP have worked on through several how do you call that, Chantal? Versions of ISBEP. So several teams have worked on the same challenge. And the challenge that they worked on was how to make the process of removing a cast friendlier, particularly for children that are typically traumatized with this process. And so it's a relatively open challenge. Actually, the students are not told what to do or what kind of outcome it's expected of them. They come in interdisciplinary teams, and they have within this challenge, they have to define how and why they want to do it. So now I want to tell you something more about how ISBEP is set up. So as we mentioned before, it's challenge-based learning. So it has all these series of characteristics that Chantal described before. But what is also important is that it is inter-program. And what does this mean? We have students from all around the university, from all the different programs. They're all welcome to join an ISBEP team. So they come to Innovation Space and they form a team. And they work on a challenge that is brought by a challenge owner. This challenge owner can be an external institution, a company, a research group. Sometimes we also have student teams who bring in a challenge themselves. And these students then work for a period of 6 months on this challenge. As we mentioned before, the students develop both the disciplinary knowledge and broad professional skills. And to support the development of disciplinary knowledge, we have academic coaches from each of the programs who are guiding the individual students throughout the projects. But we also have a team of coaches from Innovation Space who are guiding the team for the periods of 6 months. And they guide the teams in issues related to the interdisciplinary project, like communication within the team, the integration of idea, the communication towards the challenge owners, and such. So there is a lot of formative assessment going on from different perspectives and different angles. But what is also really important to mention is that at the moment in the current version of ISBEP that we have, the summative assessment takes place at an individual level, and it's done by the academic coaches from each of the programs. Do you have any questions so far? And if you do,
there is a question from Danielle.
I can see the messages, so if anyone could please read them for me, that would be great.
How do you facilitate the course in terms of scalability? So how many students can you max facilitate?
Come again, I don't know if I understand the question.
Well, I can answer it. That's maybe easier. So we currently have 50 students per year joining the ISBEP. And with the current setup, I think we're able to approximately facilitate 100 students. So that's, and whether that's a max, we don't know, but in the current setup, that's probably it. And the other question from Nanneke was, how do you select on student background?
We don't select on students' background. So the students are actually, we have a process that we follow within ISBEP, where we have a couple of challenge owners that bring these challenges to innovation space. And there is a process where the challenge owners present the challenges to students, and students from all the faculties are welcome to join ISBEP at the moment. So we don't have a selection process itself. The only thing that we do is that we go through a process to make sure that the teams are truly interdisciplinary and that they kind of fit as well, that there is a good fit between the project and the disciplines of the students, just to make sure that the students are able to fulfill the needs of their own programs. So that when an industrial designer joins a team, then he's able to do a work that is relevant for the industrial design program, for example.
Yeah, sorry, can I ask more clarification? Because I'm working for the ISBEP, the Joint Interdisciplinary Project at the TU Delft, and we did some work there. Maybe you are familiar with it, but it's, you know, to get the right backgrounds in your team, you do have to know which students apply, and they might apply to a project they like, but not very useful for the team. So what do you do then?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Before the students can choose a challenge, we make, within our departments, the educational directors look at all the challenges and indicate whether a challenge is suitable for students from their department. So they can only choose for challenges that are interesting for their department.
Yeah.
Okay, I see. So, oh, okay, yeah, that's it. And you are, because it's 6 months, as I understood.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you also look at other things like their hobbies and their other interests, or is it purely the background and their own interest?
Their own interest at the moment, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Daniela also has a question. But Daniela, I think, oh no, sorry. Daniela asks a question whether we have more info on the number of coaches and support staff. And yes, we do, but we can maybe do that at the end. So we can explain a bit more or come to it. We'll get back to that later. Yeah,
of course, of course.
All right, then I will just continue. Oh, we have an interactive question, of course. So we're curious whether you are familiar with inter-program challenge-based learning, whether you're really familiar, whether you have some first-hand experience, of whether you've never heard of this before. So this is interesting. So far, most people don't have first-hand experience, but they have heard of similar initiatives.
Yeah, are you willing to explain to us what kind of initiatives? Because it's also, I think we are well aware of other initiatives that are familiar, but maybe we can learn something as well. Again, yes.
Would you like some input from people who are actually doing this kind of initiatives?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, well, I've been working on what I said a few minutes ago about the joint interdisciplinary project at the TU Delft. That's a master project, 10 weeks.
Yeah.
And we do similar, yeah, I can go in lots of detail, but it's kind of similar, well, not, yeah. The idea is kind of similar. So students, master students work together, different disciplines across all different faculties, and they work on company projects provided by companies.
Yeah.
Is it part of the basic curriculum, or is it an elective in the elective space?
They can. It's an elective, yes.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with it from the honors program in Nijmegen. I think for 8 or 9 years we are doing this kind of thing already. But that's in an honors program, so that's not part of. It's not even part of an elective. It's something extra.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the main thing, and that Anna will explain in a second. That the main difference is that this is really part of the core curriculum of students, and that's a big difference.
Yeah, and that it's that's the reason why it's high stakes as well, because it's at the end of the bachelor program, which of course means that the students will be awarded their diploma after completion of the project. Yeah. So that's a key characteristic of ISBEP. We had another interactive question. If you are familiar with this type of initiative, or if you have experience with it, which I believe it's only one person, what is the biggest challenge that you have faced in its design? Scalability, yeah. I think I saw that one coming. I expect we won't have many other answers. So, oh yeah, group formation and assessment. All right.
I think we agree.
Yeah. Team personal assessment, balance between freedom versus structure.
Yeah.
Getting started in an interdisciplinary group. I'm curious about the one of group formation and assessment. Does anyone care to elaborate on that one?
Yes, that was me, Nanneke. Well, we had about 150 students, and we use lots of information from the students. The backgrounds, of course, we get input. We get, of course, the cases from the companies. We have to see exactly which knowledge disciplines are required for those cases. Then we have to know all the backgrounds of all the students, what bachelor did they do, what master tracks did they follow, etc. Then we want to know something about their hobbies, and then it all mixes up together and we get some teams. And that's very complicated.
Yeah. And it's also that because I also see another one on summative assessment. Is that something different than what Nanneke was mentioning?
Well, for us, what we see a lot in the end is they have to come up with the product or a report. And the problem what we see is that we also would like them to go a little bit into the in depth to really provide some science.
Yeah.
So that's always a challenge, because if you have interdisciplinary groups, the challenge is always to go deep. So that's always a discussion. And then the other way we have to assess how they work in a team, how is their team working, and that's also very difficult to actually assess, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. I think that we recognize that, Chantal. We recognize we have the same issue. Perhaps it's a good idea to then move on with the case and then we can maybe come back to this discussion later on, because I see that it's all related. So ISBEP has been running since 2017. So we have had a few rounds already of ISBEP, and it's a continuous process of improving, redesigning. In 2019, we started the research project where, as I mentioned before, we followed closely the experiences of the students, and we try to learn as much as possible about how they are experiencing ISBEP, trying to identify ways in which ISBEP can be improved, and where we can implement some innovation. And we're using this model of constructive alignment. And based on the research, we have identified a set of characteristics that we believe are kind of key for this type of inter-program challenge-based learning. And we also identified a set of issues that we think influence whether how this alignment between these three elements is achieved. So what I would like to do now is walk you through all of those, tell you something about how we experience them. Starting with the learning activities. What we mentioned before, ISBEP is characterized by having students working on open-ended challenges. So this also means that the students start with no predefined sets of goals or no predefined sets of outcomes. The students are really encouraged themselves to define both individual goals for themselves, but also goals within the team. This translates immediately into longer periods to navigate the challenges, especially if you compare that with the regular Bachelor End projects that we have at the university. So some coaches have stated that the students need up to 5 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks to actually navigate the challenge, to understand what they will do, and to come to a problem definition that makes actually sense both for them and for themselves and the team. And also this period is what we have found is that is characterized by the need of having intensive coaching and intensive interaction, formative feedback actually from academic coaches, the innovation space coaches, but also from the challenge owners. If you have any questions in between, please interrupt me. I hope Chantal and Xiaoling will be keeping track of the comments in the chat.
Yes.
Okay. The second characteristic also related to the learning activities is, as we mentioned, is that this learning experience is characterized by having multiple stakeholders. When we started the research, of course, we had identified a set of stakeholders as the ones that I mentioned before, but what we also found through the research is that the learning experiences of the students are actually influenced by a larger set of stakeholders. So we also have experts. Many times the students will be engaged in these projects that are actually perhaps fall outside the expertise of their program. So they will have to go and talk to different people outside their programs. But you also have secondary examiners, for example, and all these stakeholders influence in a way the decisions that the students make and the outcomes of the projects. We identified 3 issues in relation to this. The first one is that students really struggle to manage and balance the needs of all these stakeholders. These needs varied per student even, so not only from team to team, but even per student. As you can imagine, the needs of a challenge owner and what a challenge owner expects of a project is different than what an academic coach will expect from the projects and what the student wants to do himself. So you could really pulp and really feel that struggle and the tension from the students trying to balance all these needs. The second issue is that not only for the students, but also for the academic coaches and the challenge owners, it was difficult to maintain the overview of roles and responsibilities within the project. So for example, who should the students go to for certain things, or who is responsible for making resources available to students, and resources in terms, for example, of labs or expertise or things like that. And finally, there was a reduced feeling of accountability. This was also in relation to some challenge owners, for example, that they were perceived as very easily sometimes being able to step out of the project and leaving the students by themselves, negatively impacting, of course, the process of the students, because as you can imagine, the involvement of the challenge owners, it's important for the students and for the motivation and to keep the projects going. Any questions so far? No, then I could just move on. And then in relation to the intended learning outcomes, as we mentioned, ISBEP really facilitates that the students develop the disciplinary knowledge and the broad professional skills. The students are also, well, we have, as we mentioned, we have several activities to support the development of the students on these different areas. So the guidance of the challenge of the academic coaches, but also the innovation space coaches and the interaction with the challenge owners. But we did find four challenges in relation to this. The first one is that students really struggle to balance their individual goals and their team goals. Students are really encouraged to, well, they have to, of course, find some goals or define a project that it's interesting for them and that will facilitate the interdisciplinary work, and that they don't end up working on a regular BEP or a regular final bachelor project. But they also have to find a project and define a set of goals that will fulfill the requirements of their own programs so that they will be awarded their diploma at the end. And that was really felt as taxing for the students. Then in relation to this, of course, then maintaining the interdisciplinarity within the project was sometimes difficult. This is something that we observe students struggle with, and that it's not always achieved, unfortunately. And what happens is, of course, if motivation is lost, then that's an important motivator for students to join ISBEP and to not go to a regular BEP. They really join ISBEP because they want to learn from other disciplines and to be able to collaboratively come to an integrated solution to a societal challenge. So when this interdisciplinarity is lost, then of course, part of the motivation is gone as well. For the students who focused too much on the interdisciplinary aspect of the projects, then it was sometimes difficult to achieve enough disciplinary depth in the eyes of the academic coaches. And also in relation to that, then a lot of the students struggle to actually develop or provide enough high quality evidence for the disciplinary development. And this is of course a challenge for the students and also for the academic coaches who have to evaluate the students on that type of knowledge. Then the last item is assessment practices. As you can imagine, well, it's an inter-program learning experience, which means that we have all the different departments, all the different groups within the university are able to join ISBEP. In the current setup, the students, as I mentioned, they're evaluated by the different programs and following the rules and regulations from their specific programs. So this brought three challenges. First one, there is some clarity about the assessment procedures and criteria. I think students, but also sometimes academic coaches were confused about what criteria should be used to assess the students. Also, in relation to that, there was a discrepancy between the perceived learning outcomes and the assessment criteria. So a lot of the activities that the students engage in during ISBEP have to do with this interdisciplinary work and the fact that they work on open-ended challenges. However, they're still being assessed on the criteria of the regular BEP. So that does not cover a lot of the learning outcomes or the learning gains of the students through this process. And that was, on the one hand, confusing for the students, but also frustrating at times. Currently, as I mentioned, the summative assessment is done only by the academic coaches, but the expectation of the students was that also innovation space coaches will participate in that assessment procedure, and also that input from the challenge owners will be considered. And that was not the case. So a lot of surprises for the students there. And finally, when talking to the academic coaches, what we also discovered is that many of the academic coaches had to adapt their own procedures. from their own program, just to fulfill the needs of the students towards assessment. So they had to add procedures just to, for example, clarify what the goal of ISBEP is, or the context in which the students did the project towards secondary examiners or examination committees. Because many times, well, these procedures vary from program to program, and not all the people that are involved in the assessment will understand what ISBEP was about. So these were the issues, the characteristics and the issues that we uncovered through the research. Now we have, again, an interactive question. Now that we have talked about them, we're curious to hear which issues do you consider the most relevant for your context? And then we also ask you to please choose your top 3, and this is a large question, so please take your time.
I see the ones with cameras on are working really hard, so that's nice.
And maybe I'll put some music in between.
Yay, there the first answers are coming in. So the student learning, the individual and team goals are most recognizable.
Yeah, balancing the individual and team goals indeed.
Yeah.
And then a clarity about the assessment procedure and criteria. I guess that's also those last two are yeah, the unclarity about assessment procedures and criteria, and the discrepancy between learning outcomes and assessment criteria, they're quite linked, I suppose.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh.
We have one more answer. Interesting. Does anybody want to elaborate on something, or does anyone have any questions or care to share some experiences?
Yeah, maybe I can ask a question. You said that they are also assessed on their own disciplinary level at the end of the course. Yeah, I was just wondering how that would work. Apparently that is a challenge, and it is a multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary project. And that is a very difficult balance. That's what we see as well. The academic coaches are usually not used to work interdisciplinary, so they expect a certain depth. And it's hard to tell them, or make them realize that maybe the depth is not the importance, but maybe more the width, or whatever. How do you say that?
Yeah.
So how do you experience that in your course?
Well, this is definitely this is something that I was going to go back to towards the conclusions of the project, but definitely this is something that we believe has to be addressed across the university or across the departments. Chantal is now very heavily involved in a project where the main goal is to align the departments on what ISBEP is about and what ISBEP, like what intended learning outcomes should ISBEP encompass, and what kind of learning experience do we want to provide the students. It's true, the issue with the academic coaches, we also experience that, especially with first-time academic coaches. What we have also observed is that once the coaches go through 1 or 2 rounds of coaching ISBEP students, they kind of understand better what ISBEP is about and what is the added value for the students for joining a project of those characteristics. So much so that they they have really demonstrated flexibility in the assessment procedures, and they're willing to really kind of modify the criteria that they have in a way to better fit the needs of, or to provide a fairer assessment for the students. Chantal, do you have something to add to that?
No, sorry.
Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense.
Maybe it's because all the Bachelor End projects are not only, it is their in-depth, so they prove that they're good at chemical engineering, or that they're worth getting their bachelor. But it's also, for some departments, it's more about application of that knowledge.
Yeah.
Some departments are more about proving the academic level. Some departments require a group project within their discipline, for example. So it's really, for every department, it's a different focus, what is most important for the Bachelor End project. And that's what makes this fun, and the struggle sometimes as well.
Yeah,
I can see that. Most practices in which they will end up will be interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary, but most education is monodisciplinary. So
Yes.
there's always this kind of problem that, and I think there's a certain kind of obsession with assessment in universities that's not suited to what we actually can assess. So I always compare this with getting your driver license. Once you have it, you know that you have to learn to drive.
Yeah.
Much more better, and have to practice a lot before you can do it. But that does, so everybody who gets his first job will learn a lot during the first job. And apparently that first job is not in a kind of educational setting, which would be helpful if it was.
Yeah. Well, and the upside is that we really notice that all our departments, we have those challenges that Anna just mentioned, but all our departments do see the added value of the setup as it is.
Yeah.
Good.
So
that's great.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And what it's even more, they're really thinking along with us and co-creating ISBEP, and they're really open to having a discussion on what ISBEP is about. And and I just wanted to add something more to the issue of the academic coaches, because something that we're going to experiment with now, it's also the training of the academic coaches, because we also notice that there are some things that work differently within challenge-based learning. And for example, the fact that formative assessment is so key and so important. And also in terms of expectations and things like that. This is something that we're going to start doing as well as of, I think, February. Where we're setting up a training the coach kind of session, where we discuss all these issues as well, and what they can expect from a process for a student that goes through ISBEP compared to a process where they will go through a regular BEP, let's say.
Yeah.
Do you also have, sorry, can I ask a question?
Yeah, sorry, Nanneke, you're, and after that, Daniela, I saw your hand, so please.
Can I raise a hand somewhere? Anyway, I was wondering about, you said somewhere that they needed more time to actually write their problem statement. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Because that's what we see as well. And I was wondering if you have any training, any process to help them.
No, we at the moment, not what we're looking into is developing what we have noticed that the students need like a tool set. So we need to give them tools to be able to go through that process. So that's one thing that we're also looking into. The second thing that we have discussed a lot is that the fact that you have an open challenge and the fact that you have a process that it's kind of unpredictable doesn't mean that it shouldn't have some kind of structure. So you can think of it as having some kind of milestones in the first weeks or so. So we know more or less that after 4 or 5 weeks, the students should get to one point. And I think what it's key is providing the students with the guidance that they need and the tools that they need so that they can navigate that process. And third, what I also feel is really important is I think it's key how you frame that. So actually, I have some issues in framing this as a challenge, because I strongly believe that those 4 weeks are perhaps the most insightful for the students. The students really learn a lot from this process of struggling and, you know, iterating and redefining the project. And in the beginning, they don't really see where they're going with this process. But after they have completed that and they look back at it, they see, wow, yeah, I went through this and I actually learned how to talk to my peers or people from a completely different discipline that I hadn't talked to before. So yeah, that's what I can say about that.
Daniela, you have a question still, or?
Yeah, well, I have so many things to say, but maybe we can just move on and maybe we can chat longer about it. Also with Nonneke, you know, we have a special we have a special how do you say that, system in place on how to do team forming. We have special problem statement workshops, and yeah, we have a lot of similarities in different things, and I'm just curious to learn more from you guys as well.
Well, let's get together. I'm also interested.
Well, and Anna, we only have 8 minutes left. So.
Yes, indeed. So I propose we skip the next question, because the next question was about the least relevant, but I think we can see that from this chart. So I think it's not relevant anymore. Just to wrap it up, some conclusions in relation to ISBEP. I think it is very important to stress that despite, and I think Chantal already mentioned that, despite all these challenges, we have had a super positive response, both from students, but also from the different programs. We have also seen that the students definitely feel like they have learned, they have gained more knowledge, or they have deepened their disciplinary knowledge, as well as broadened their professional skills, even though they struggle sometimes to provide evidence for that. We're really happy with our research in the sense that it has really highlighted different opportunities for redesigning. As we mentioned before, Chantal is heavily involved in this project where she is trying to look into ways to align the different programs. And yeah, we have seen that indeed this issue of achieving constructive alignment, it's especially between the intended learning outcomes and the assessment methods, that's one aspect where we really want to focus on. Well, we have to look at the 3 elements, of course, but we see that this is important. In relation to the assessment, what we also see is that indeed the large number of stakeholders that participate in these projects, it has an impact on that alignment. The diversity in rules and regulation is an important barrier for assessment design in our case. That's also why, as we mentioned, we need to tackle this throughout the organization and try to align everyone on what the students will learn, or what we expect the students, what we hope the students will learn through ISBEP, but also how should this development or this learning should be measured or assessed. For the next steps, this is what we're busy on. We're trying to redesign, innovate, improve. It's an iterative process, so it's a never-ending process, I will say. For now, we're continue working on it. If you're interested in, I forgot that. If you're interested to learn more about the research, please get in touch with me. I'm happy to share with you the article where we write and elaborate on these issues. And then we have the last 2 interactive questions. We're wondering, what is your biggest takeaway from this session? So if you could please just go once more to Menti and share with us.
Yes, and Nonneke is asking whether we can share your email. So I'll post your email address and mine, so people can always contact us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the slides, can we share them?
They're in Mentimeter, so I don't know how to do it.
I think we can export them with even with the answers.
Okay, we'll try for sure.
But we'll try.
We need to get together to discuss further. I cannot agree more.
Yeah, the fact that our students and stakeholders are enthusiastic, because the challenges that Anna mentioned, I'm sorry, they're not easy to solve because it's in the core of the curriculum, but that's the one reason that keeps us going, because yeah,
indeed. Yeah. That you also assess some discipline, that sounds so challenging. I'm wondering about the part of that it's harder for the social sciences. Can the person that wrote this elaborate a little bit on that in the last minute that we have?
Yeah, we created a minor where all the students are going to design education. So our challenges are based for designing new education, actually. So we are at Erasmus X designing and disrupting innovation ourselves. And we thought, let's also let the students do that. And we designed a minor. So although we try to match them up in interdisciplinary teams or multidisciplinary teams, we don't assess them on a discipline level, I believe. We don't look at, oh, you're a law student, so I'm gonna assess how you did on law, or hey, you are a psychology student, I'm gonna look at what you did on psychology. That is, in my memory, we really didn't do that.
Yeah.
Sounds really challenging with all these different types.
It is.
Yeah, it is.
But I don't know whether it's harder for social sciences than within engineering education, because chemistry and, for example, mathematics, that's really completely different as well.
Yeah, but I think there's an addition to that. If you combine social sciences with engineering, for instance, it's a completely different way of using the language.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
we're
we had
also
a minor in our minor. We not only had students from social sciences, but also some students from TU Delft. It was an LDE minor, so we also had people from TU Delft. So we organized this at the University of Erasmus University. We didn't have any academic coaches on engineering. We don't know how to do that, but it's very interesting.
This semester, we also have students from Fontis joining the challenges. So we have students from TUE, and then we have a couple of students from Fontis that are also collaborating with our students. So this is the first time. So we're also really curious to look at the end and evaluate how that went and what kind of challenges, how they experienced that as well.
Cool.
All right, I think we have one more slide, but I welcome you to please come and leave your thoughts. If you have any tips for us, please do so. I'm not sure, Chantal, do you know if I can move to the next slide without closing the voting here?
No, I don't know.
Okay, so then I will invite you to, if you have any tips for us, please put them in the chat. Yeah. That way we can now close the session. I believe you would like to say something on the expert pool.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, well, Anna and me, we work at Innovation Space, and as Innovation Space, we're the expertise center for challenge-based learning, and we want to offer we offer expertise within our university, but also when you need help or you want to discuss something, or you would like us to provide a workshop on challenge-based learning, please let us know. And it's not only Anna and me, it's a lot of experts within the university on challenge-based learning. So welcome to join.
All right. Then I think this concludes our presentation. I want to thank you all for joining us today and for making this an interactive session. I hope that we have had some food for thought. And yeah, we look forward to hearing from you and to connecting further.
Yay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much.
It was great. I think we need to go back to the main room. And I think this is a relatively very interactive session with a lot of participants really engaged in, asked a lot of questions. Thank you so much, Chantal and Anna, for your presentation. And we hope that to hear from you more of your research in the future. So I'll send the link. So now let's meet again in the main room. See ya.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Bye.
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 Thank you, Anna, Chantal.
Thank you for joining.